Hey everyone, this is Scott Moore, and you're watching the SMC Journal podcast. This is the show that's dedicated to performance engineering and all aspects of that within IT today. I am Scott Moore, your host, and I really appreciate you joining me today. We are talking about network performance in this episode, and I had some specific questions around cellular connectivity versus Starlink connectivity. And I also wanted to find out, is it possible to take multiple Starlinks and put them together and make one kind of pipe out of them? And I knew the person to call and ask this. So I'm really excited about this interview today. I really love talking to this person, and I'm sure that you'll get as excited as I am. If you dig the whole performance in the network portion of performance, there's been some exciting advancements recently. So that's what we'll talk about today. Also, a conference that's happening in the near future that I wanted to make you aware of. Before we do that, let's talk about the sponsors that make this show happen. This episode is sponsored by Micro Focus and the LoadRunner Solutions family. That includes LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. You know, performance matters. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners in the world? Join that community at community.microfocus.com, scan the QR code, and check out the LoadRunner family page on performance engineering, as well as their YouTube playlist that we've got links for in the show notes on smcjournal.com as well as YouTube. This podcast is sponsored by Folk Consulting. They offer high-quality consulting services around application performance management and operational monitoring of system performance. Ryan Folk and his staff of highly experienced consultants can handle any of your needs around application delivery management, analytics, application performance testing, monitoring, and digital management. Find out more at folkconsulting.com. This episode is sponsored by Total Performance Consulting. They provide the highest quality performance engineering, automation, QA, and development services possible, and they've been doing so since 2006. With hundreds of years of combined experience in performance engineering, they've helped countless companies tackle and solve complex performance challenges. They can help you with your application performance testing, analysis, remediation, infrastructure evaluation, monitoring setup and analysis, performance testing in a CI/CD pipeline, and many other services that will help your company get, keep, and extend your competitive edge. Get more details at totalperform.com. Okay, we now have some new things to think about with network performance regarding cellular connectivity, 5G networks, and Starlink. As Starlink has begun increasing in popularity, I'm getting a lot of questions about Starlink. And I had a couple of questions about that myself, and I knew who I should contact about that. And you may have already seen him on an episode of the Performance Tour earlier this year. His name is Peter West, and I loved that interview, had a lot of great information in it. So I figured I would call him and bring him on the show to talk about some of the advancements in network performance. And I had a question about Starlink. Can you bond multiple Starlinks together and make one big giant pipe out of it in case you just want to be geeky and get more out of it? And can you do that when you're driving around with the mobile plan? Because Starlink is now offering the capability of moving around, not just being stationary. So just things I was thinking about and how to get better network performance out of something like Starlink and satellite connectivity. So with that, let's go to the interview that I did today with Peter West, and let's find out. Hey, Peter West, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I haven't seen you since we did the interview for the Performance Tour a few months ago. I have to say that episode is one of the most well received. Your interview, we have to scale it down a little bit and edit it for the main episode, but then we release the unedited version that's a lot longer. And I think your unedited interview is the most watched of all the highlights that we have because people were just so interested in what you had to say.
That's great.
Yeah. So if you want to reintroduce yourself and kind of what you're doing there with West Networks, we're talking about network performance and some of the things that are happening with that on today's episode. And you're my go-to person for that. So some people may not have seen that episode of the Performance Tour. Why don't you introduce yourself again?
Happily. Once again, my name is Peter West. I'm the senior infrastructure architect at West Networks. I'm also the owner. or one of the owners, and we specialize in really weird connectivity. It's creating connectivity solutions where standard fiber or terrestrial internet like cable modems and things like that just might not be available. And so our verticals are like healthcare, providing mobile MAMO technology or communications for real-time transmission of radiology images, or broadcasting, like providing enough bandwidth for multi-camera streaming for REMI. Things where you need to be able to produce video out in the field, or with the current pandemic, maybe you have talent that's working from home or producers that are working from home and need reliable connectivity back into the production studio. And then we do enterprise connectivity, like weird job sites out in the middle of nowhere and things like that. And so really what we try to do is create reliable communications anywhere in the world.
So because your specialty is the network and the things that you're doing, really performance is always in the front of your mind, because you have to take large files, get them processed in remote locations that don't always have the bandwidth to do so. And you're trying to fix those problems where there's sort of a bottleneck at the network layer. But from talking to you and others, there's a lot of exciting things happening in networking specifically to improve performance around, in general. And you seem to be involved in a lot of that. Can you talk about some of the innovations and things you've seen recently or done recently?
Yeah, happily. So, you're right. Technology. I mean, I remember when 4G came out and they said, right, it's going to be the end all be all. You're not going to need cable modems. You're not going to need fiber anymore. It's going to be, and everybody knows that it's not. but and then 5G's coming out and they're saying the same thing, right? And I get a lot of people that will say, "Oh man, are you worried about 5G?" Not, because now people won't need your bonding solution because they can just have a single 5G modem. And we've been working with some of the biggest companies in the world, and we're proving over and over again that the ability to bond 5G has actually made 5G even better, because now we're increasing the availability of bandwidth. And that's what 5G is providing us, is that increased availability of throughput. And there's Starlink now that's coming out, and they're starting to really, the customer adoption is starting to come there, and we're seeing more customers call us and say, "Hey, I bought a Starlink. How do I bond that with my 5G modem, or how do I bond that with my cable modem?" And so I bought a 5G, or I bought a Starlink for my house, and so I run Starlink with my cable modem. We just deployed Starlink at our office. Once again, making sure that we're up to date with what our customers are seeing. And so we have 5G and Starlink and fiber and cable modems, and trying to combine those together and understand what the impact of that might be. And
Okay, before you get too far into that, because I've got a question about that. Now let me bring this up. I want to show everybody this, that I have this. I'm switch cameras just a second. This is my mobile unit that I got from you guys. Hopefully that works.
yeah, I see it.
And that's what I take with me. And a lot of people that know me, they know that I bring this with me where I go. And I have relatives where this is the only internet that I can actually use and work from their place. So this has really got me out of a jam several times. So can you talk briefly about what this is before we get into the whole Starlink and the bonding thing? Because I think that's important. Some people may not know that they can get that would, a person can get that. It's not just for first responders or a business.
Definitely. And actually, Peplink has launched SpeedFusion Cloud, which I'll get into in a second. But so what you're looking at there, and that what you just showed, is our Transit Duo case, and that's actually going to be renamed now. It's called the Transit Pro, and that is a dual 4G cellular router. And what's really nice about that is, with T-Mobile and AT&T and Verizon, they've all launched broadband plans now, and so you can actually have a broadband, like an AT&T broadband plan or a T-Mobile broadband plan, put it into the Transit Pro, and actually combine the throughput of those two cellular connections to create increased reliability anywhere you go. And now with the BR2 Pro 5G, we now have the dual 5G version of that router that allows you to take advantage of Verizon's home 5G service and Verizon's 5G broadband plans. So now you can take Verizon 5G, T-Mobile 5G, and AT&T 5G, combine any two of those together for a sub $3,000 router. And so it's an incredible piece of equipment. And when I talk about combine, what I'm talking about is actually bonding the throughput. And so Peplink has a SOHO or a consumer version of SpeedFusion called SpeedFusion Connect, and allows anybody without any infrastructure at all to take a Peplink router and aggregate the throughput to what's called SpeedFusion Connect and bond your services. So that means reliable Teams meetings, reliable video streaming, reliable Netflix, whatever it might be that you're trying to accomplish can be done on a consumer level now.
And that's really important for somebody like me who's traveling around the country to different areas where today Verizon's really strong. Tomorrow it's not the best and I have to move to something else temporarily, and then I move on. And then AT&T is the strongest connection I have. But there's usually like a stronger and a weaker and then a nothing in those three, right? But between the three you kind of have full coverage, which is great. And I guess you and I are going to have to talk about an upgrade to this very soon to do into the 5G.
5G. Yeah.
But you're talking about bonding technology, right? Now, you mentioned Starlink. Now, this has piqued my interest because my sister just got Starlink. I've got other people that are in remote areas that are just putting up Starlink. But you just said you could take Starlink and bond it with this. If I bought Starlink, I could actually combine it with this. Or I could get multiple Starlinks and bond them together as one big giant pipe to the sky. Is that right?
That is right.
Tell me how this works. Lead me to the promised land.
So one of the things with Starlink is that it's now lower latency connectivity, and latency is key in bonding. If the latency is too different between any carrier, you're not going to be able to properly bond the circuits. Starlink, because of their low orbit and the density of their satellites, we actually have the ability now to bond Starlink with 5G. So you can have a 4G connection with AT&T, a 5G connection with T-Mobile, and 2 Starlinks, and I can bond all those together to create a really reliable stream.
Now you're talking nerd talk for me. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I want to test, and I want to. So, I mean, theoretically, though, now Starlink just changed their service so that you can actually start roaming with it for people with RVs and yachts and things like that. They can start
Correct.
moving around, and it still can be. And I know it's a special. There's maybe special gear for that they're selling. I'm trying to research that right now, but I know that they made it from being stationary only to you can move around. How is that affected if you tried to, like, say you had an RV and you put 2 Starlink dishes on top and you're driving around? I mean, can you still? I mean, is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It is, and there are tricks. So there's actually some new Starlink antennas coming out, which I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about. So I'll just say there's some cool new stuff coming. And the idea is that with Starlink and the roaming profiles or the roaming plans, actually there's tricks that people post this online. So I'm not sharing anything new, but the trick is actually having the Starlink aiming straight up, mounting those to the roof of your vehicle, then having your 5G antennas, and you could actually bond all those together. So as you're roaming and driving your RV, you can actually have 2 Starlinks connecting to satellites, and as they drop and reconnect the different satellite cells, the 5G is holding the connection going, and literally you have 5G and Starlink everywhere in the world. And so we're going to be deploying 2 Starlink antennas on the top of my RV and doing a kind of a demo of this through the mountains of West Virginia.
That was the next question, because I knew that you bought a Sprinter van for the business and you travel around all over the country. So what kind of amazing setup do you have in that Sprinter?
So I have an HD4 5G, so it's going to give me 4 5G modems, and then I have 4 mobility 40G antennas on mounted to the roof of the vehicle, and then we're going to install 2 Starlinks vertical.
Well, you'll definitely be able to get your emails.
I definitely will. So
that's awesome. So this is really cool to even find out that you can do that. And I know there's other things that are happening with networking as well. You've got a conference to talk about a lot of this stuff that's going to be coming up in November that I just found out about, and I would love to hear more about. What is this conference that you're having? Where is it at? What kind of things are going to be presented there? Because I'm interested in going.
Definitely, thank you for bringing that up, Scott. One of the things that I get, one of the common complaints I get is people say, "I can't believe I've never heard about you before. Like, I've never heard about this technology. How does SpeedFusion work? How does what's the future of 5G? What's the roadmap, or what's happening in this technology?" And I wanted to create a conference that hopefully is the first of many. That's going to be the first annual conference. But I wanted to create a conference that allowed like-minded passionate individuals to share their stories, their unique situations, and then also bond that with Peplink roadmap and Peplink technology. And so this is going to be a Peplink technology summit. It'll be our first annual summit in Savannah, Georgia in November. And what we're going to do is we're going to deep dive into speed fusion, deep dive into new technologies like dynamic weighted bonding, show people how to use in control, show people how to use Speed Fusion Connect. We're going to have a special session on BGP and AWS for enterprises to learn how to connect into AWS seamlessly with Peplink SD-WAN. But then we're going to have what's coming in the technology. Where's 5G routers? What's the roadmap for our 5G platform? We're gonna have a talk on Starlink and how to connect that to the routers. And so really just connecting people, passionate individuals to the Peplink ecosystem and sharing what we've learned. And hopefully year over year, that knowledge base is gonna grow and the customers are gonna start doing their own papers and their own presentations about how they're solving problems.
Tell me about maybe one or two of the presentations that you know are going to be presented there, because I found the page. I will share the link to this on our notes, our show notes for this episode. But there was one out there that was talking about autonomous vehicles and at scale or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Happily. So Martin Langrid from the UK, he's like the Peter West of Europe. So he's a very passionate Peplink engineer in Europe. He's actually coming over and he's going to do an entire talk about autonomy at scale. He does a lot of robotics, and I guess he was partnered with one of the boats. I don't want to give away too much of his story because he's going to tell that story, but he's going to tell the story about how he's autonomized fleets at scale with Peplink SD-WAN. And then I'm going to give a talk about healthcare and big data. And I call it big data because it's not your typical, Instagram with lots of images. It's transmitting large files over the internet, and the story and the history of how I'm able to do that with bonding. And then just this week, we added a new segment for Starlink, and we're going to do an entire deep dive about Starlink bonding and how to do that. And the entire event is going to be powered by Peplink and Starlink. So we're going to have 5G modems and Starlink modems, and that's how we're going to power the internet at the event.
So I know this is a Peplink thing, and I know that you are an authorized Peplink, dealer and everything. And they have not sponsored this show, by the way, but I'm open to it. No, I'm just kidding. But the techniques and the things you'll be talking about is it vendor specific? In other words, if I just get Peplink, now I'm locked into this vendor. Or are you talking about techniques and ideas and things that can be shared just in general, that they just work?
That's a good question. Some of the stuff is going to be specific, like our talk about speed fusion bonding, right? That's specific to Peplink. However, there are other bonding vendors out there. And so you could take what we're applying and apply it to that technology. And then some of the stuff that we're talking about is going to be independent, like BGP and Starlink and 5G roadmaps and what that means to a consumer, what 5G really means. Those are vendor independent conversations. And so we're going to have some really good conversation about just the technology and the future of connectivity. And then we're going to have very specific trainings on like in control and speed fusion that are very unique to Peplink.
So who is the user or the person that you want at this conference? Because it doesn't sound to me like it's you. It's not a bunch of vendors, and you're not going to get attacked by a bunch of vendors and they just want to sell you something. This is training stuff. So who do you want at this conference?
Passionate individuals that are into infrastructure or connectivity, but also end users that just want to know more, right? I mean, this game has changed since 2019. Prior to 2019, I almost did zero consumer-based connectivity solutions. I would say 30% of our company is now consumer-based connectivity. You trying to do your job on the road. And so now it's not just these large companies that are trying to create connectivity and extend their infrastructure. It's now Scott Moore. It's now Peter West in his RV. And so I don't want to limit that scope to just my enterprise customers. The idea is to share what we know with Scott, with you. And so it's really anybody that is interested in connectivity, the work from home individuals, the work from anywhere individuals, and as well as your healthcare and your business or your enterprise customers that want to learn how to expand their infrastructure via 5G or Starlink.
Okay. All right. So last question, but I got to put you on the spot. I have to ask this. 6G.
Let's not
I'm
go there.
starting to hear about it already. So if
Well, no,
5G
there's Cat
is
8, right?
starting to, what's 6G? What's it going to get us?
Always with those, it's always about the next. It's about the frequencies and the technology, right? So the whole idea of 5G is 5G is interoperable, right? So like 5G technologies, you have your Verizon modem can talk with your T-Mobile modem, and so the technologies match, right? 5G is just 5th generation, so 6th generation is just going to streamline those high-speed bandwidths even more. So you're going into better frequency management, better opportunity for bandwidth, and that's really what you're getting, right? Better opportunity for bandwidth, and I think that's going to be a couple years away, but we'll be ready for it. I'll tell you that much.
I know that you will. Well, thanks so much for that information. We'll share all this with the viewers, and we'll try to get their feedback on it. And I'm going to sign up for the conference. I'm thinking I'm going to be there, so I'm hoping to see you soon.
I hope to see you there. Thank you,
Thanks
Scott.
for being on the show. As always, a pleasure talking to Peter. I probably could talk to him another hour about all this stuff and keep diving in. It's interesting how much things change in just a short period of time. Even since the interview that we did earlier in the year on the Performance Tour, things have changed. There have been advancements on the cellular routers, and also there have been a lot more satellites put up into space for Starlink, and I'm starting to hear more and more people get them, and the plans obviously of roving. So that is interesting in and of itself. I'd like to know what you thought about this interview, and are you thinking about maybe you might be a person who would want to go to this conference? If you are, I'll probably see you there. So you'll probably see some more announcements from me on going there, but I want to hear your feedback. So contact me at scottmoore.consulting. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. There's my LinkedIn URL that you can get to me, as well as the @LoadTester Twitter handle. And of course, you can reach me through regular email at help@scottmoore.consulting. If you like this content, it'd be great if you signed up to subscribe on our YouTube channel so you'll be notified whenever we have new episodes. This podcast comes out twice a week right now, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 a.m., as well as the Performance Tour is also on that same channel, released once a month. But also we have highlights, episode summaries, galleries, blogs, pictures that, from travel that I post up. So theperformancetour.com is that website. smcjournal.com. We always put the show notes there, as well as in the YouTube video notes at the same time. Don't forget to visit our sponsors and thank our sponsors for supporting the performance community. And until next time, for the SMC Journal podcast, this is Scott Moore saying thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.